Beep, beep. What's up, guys? My name is Sam World, and I make sound design and music production videos for dance music here on YouTube. These past few months, I've been working on a new sound bank for Sylenth1 called Dirty Chicken Volume 3. Dirty Chicken Volume 3 is a pack filled with presets inspired by the DirtyBird label. During the creation of this pack, I had some awesome sound design sessions where I learned some new interesting techniques these guys were using to create some very eerie, lush, retro bass sounds. Today's video will show you some of my favorite techniques that I used in order to create some of these sounds. If you want to support my channel, make sure to head over to evilsounds.com where you can find all of my sound design work. Dirty Chicken Volume 3 should be out hopefully by Thursday night. And with that being said, let's get straight into the techniques that we're going to be looking at in this video. Technique number 1, pitch drift. Now, during the creation of these sound banks, what I'll usually do to get inspired and know what kind of sounds I want to make is I'll listen to some of the artists that the DirtyBird label has. In this instance, I heard a lot of Claude Von Stroke tracks where he had leads that were sounding a bit retro-ish, but at the same time, leads that sounded like they were on the verge of going out of tune, but never actually did. It reminded me heavily of the LoFi and Indie Rock sound that a lot of people have been getting popular in making. To execute pitch driftness, I first recommend that you get a tuner plugin or use the one that your DAW has. In Ableton, we have one, and we're going to be activating that because this effect is going to get the sound to sound a little bit like it's drifting in pitch. We don't want to go overboard to it to where we go to the next dimension, to the next key, where it can lead to a sound sounding out of tune. So from here, what we're going to do is set this up to pitch A. We're going to set our LFO to free, so that way we don't have a retrig occurring, which means we don't have the same position starting every time the wavetable starts up or you play a sound. Instead, it's going to be allowed to go, oh, you might start up here or down here the next hit, or in the between that the next hit. If you have this turned off, you're always going to start at the beginning over here and then go through the phase. So that's why we set it to free, just so we have a little bit of randomness to it. From there, we're going to move the pitch up, some gain. Let's add a bit of release to this sound so we can play it melodically. So as you can see, that sounds a little bit too... So maybe we can decrease that just a tiny bit. Let's add a bit of reverb, maybe a low pass to the sound. Notice how it's on the verge of going out of tune, but it doesn't. But again, you don't want to go too far where it sounds really bad. So again, some of you guys might not consider this a DirtyBird kind of sound. So maybe we can add a bit of like an attack, a little resonance to our filter. We can add a cutoff AB here. So this is not part of the tutorial. We're just going to kind of design the sound like this. So that we get something like... And now we're starting to get that very retro. Let's open it up just a tiny bit more. And you can see how there's just more character. If I get rid of this, and now let's DirtyBird it. Some people might like that sound, some might not, but this is an effect that you hear in a lot of DirtyBird tracks here and there. And the cool thing about it for me is it came to realization like, man, I got to smoke some weed and hear this stuff because it's going to trip you out. Technique 2, pitch drifting, release. Similar to the first technique, this technique, instead of having an LFO that's activating this pitch drift, we're going to be using now the release in order to activate it. And this is going to lead to some very interesting leads that sort of sound like either one, a cat dying, or the sound goes out of tune as you let go of the key. Now, in order to program this, first off, let's just get rid of this modulation. We are going to need to have a huge amount of release. And then from here, again, this tuner plugin is going to come really in handy to set this up. I'm going to leave this program in here like this for now, but let's add a bit of release to that. So from here now, instead of using LFO, we use the envelope, and we're going to route, again, this guy to pitch A, but here's the key. We have to put our sustain down, put our modulation we want here, and then from there, increase the sustain slowly. Okay, so now once we have it, notice that when the sound was let go right now, you saw how that went straight back there. So now with the release knob on our envelope, we can control how fast we go from here to here. And there you go. Now, the cool thing about this sound is that majority of this one, I hear a lot more in chord stabs and really cool stuff like that. So for instance, what I mean by this is we can use another saw here, and we're going to put maybe a note change of 3 to create Chicago kind of chord. And there you go. You get that really eerie sort of reverse to it, okay? Let's put a bit more voices so it's a little wider. And there we go. So again, we can even do this further. The lower the release, the faster that's going to happen. And there we go. So now we can do. Okay, so very cool. And then from there, this is a technique that we're not really going to talk about, but you can also apply this cutoff so that you get this very cool theme. We're going to route this to a mod wheel, and this is just extra credit for some of you guys. We're going to set the gain to that, so that way we can pull this up. And then you can give a bit of movement. Let's go heavy with that though. And lower this down, LFO1 gain higher. And again, maybe a faster rate. And now let's get rid of that. Okay, so this technique is very, very cool, as you guys can hear, and it's heard a lot in these sort of chord stat based tracks. But again, simple to put, but who would think about doing this stuff? And that's the cool part and the advanced side of it. It's a creativity to go like, I want this to happen, and programming it in. Technique number 3, step velocity modulations. Some DirtyBird artists opt to use modular gear in order to create these really cool effects patterns that you hear in some of their music. However, using modular gear, 1, is very expensive to some people, and number 2, it has a learning curve as well. However, if you don't really care about having a nice wall of modular gear, then you can definitely use Sylenth1 to create very similar modular patterns for your own songs. And in order to execute this, we're going to use the ARP feature inside of Sylenth with the step velocity mode on. So in order to do this, what we're going to do is first off write in a MIDI note that's just going to be in the key of the scale we're in. From there, we're going to have to go into the mix section and program step velocity modulation here. And then from there, we're going to round it to stuff that we might want. This is where it can get very interesting for you to do. And this is where you can imagine yourself grabbing like cables, plugging in the step velocity MIDI information from one of your modular gears into multiple things like the pitch, the cutoff, cross modulation, etc. However, here we have access to all of these. And from there, you can get some very interesting results. For me, I'm going to use the filter for this example. And from there, we're just going to move it to the right. Now, from here, we're going to have this when we turn on the ARP on. Okay, so from there, maybe I'll use a low pass with a high resonance. And then now we need to program the step velocity. So once you're set up here, go to mode and you're going to set step mode on. From there, you're going to notice here we're going to have the ARP pattern, and we can switch notes as well if you desire. But the key with this is going to be below that we have a velocity. Now at 0 velocity, that means, or none, there's 0 change to the filter. So for instance, let's say we put the cutoff here. Let's go maybe a little higher. And notice how the next hit sounds a little bit more open. So from there, let's assume here I'm just going to... And then from there, just play around with the values. Let's just see what we can do here. Let's go there. From there, we can use our LFOs to maybe apply a bit of pan A and B so that we get a really cool... It's a bit of organic width, as I like to call it. And then from there, it's really about just the creativity that you have. For instance, for me personally, I feel like the pitch shouldn't matter. So I'm just going to run something like this, maybe a sample and hold. And then from there, the step velocity, I can choose to apply it to other stuff in a negative format. For instance, maybe distortion with a decimation occurring. But again, this one maybe slight, just a bit up. From there, I might decide to now transpose, not really caring, but caring more about the tone. You can speed it up. So that way you don't have to use the damn thing in the loop mode. You can do something like... And then from there, maybe apply a bit of reverb delay. Again, we can go higher up. And then you can kind of play around with this. It doesn't have to sound robotic. You can take off the distortion. You can go as fast as you want and do really cool stuff with this. Again, your creativity is the end here. Play around with it. For instance, I could even do it to the pitch. Delay rhythm effects. Now this one is cool and not specifically for Sylenth1, as you can do this with any delay out there. Let's say you have a sound, you can put a delay on it and do the same exact technique. But the idea of this is we're gonna run a delay at 100%, and then we're gonna play with the left and the right timing of that delay in order to create more complex rhythms out of a single shot or a couple of shots that you might have. The way this is gonna work is simple, check it out. So here I have this really cool patch that I've made for the pack. It's called ARP, this should be my ringtone. And originally it sounds like this. But with delay added, okay, now the way this works is first off, you're gonna put the dry and wet at 100%, which means the dry signal is gonna pretty much activate the delay, but from there, you're gonna use your left and right timing in order to create the rhythm. So for instance, here I'm at 116 or 1/8. If I decide to put this at 132D and then this guy maybe at 114, then I'm gonna get a different effect. From there, I can put a bit of feedback if I want repeating rhythms where it's kind of like a bit more happening rather than just dry like that. And let's see, let's try something else. So from here, you can see how I'm using a step velocity on the volume for this guy in order to create the rhythm. So for instance, if I change this rhythm up maybe to the first hit there and then there. And you can do a lot of really cool stuff with these kind of delays. Again, it's all going to depend obviously on the initial source that you have, but from there you're creating a new source, a new rhythm with the delay. And the cool thing about this is if the sound is changing, the left side will always sound different to the right, and that can create really interesting, complex rhythm-based kind of effect or percussive or melodic ideas for your tracks. Atonal basses. Atonal means the bass is not really going to have a stable key to it. So a lot of these kind of basses will usually be going from one key to another, essentially like a pitch down where it sounds like boo, boo, boo. Now this kind of bass was popular back then, but you still hear it coming up now and then. And if you're looking for unique bass lines that no one else is creating at the moment, this might be a solution to you if, again, it inspires you. Now, the way we create atonal basses is, again, it cannot have a key to it and it has to be atonal, but I still recommend that you play the MIDI note on the key of what you are making. So in this scenario, we're just going to have a kick and drums going. And what I'm going to do is first use a sine, because this is probably one of my favorite basses from Arladon as well as Walker and Royce that they do. And the idea here is we're going to go up in the pitch, go high decay, and then from there we're going to play this. You're going to have that higher up, but then when we go into the bass region, you can see how that works. So let's go low. Let's add a bit of distortion to that. Okay, so you can kind of see what I mean by atonal. It's like doo, doo, doo. So it never has like a stable key to it. It's always shifting in pitch. So from there, we can play around with like what we're doing. Maybe we don't have to go like that high up, and then from there. Okay, another example we might do is very fast. Magic fingers. In the pack, there's this bass called Arladon Campout, which utilizes this technique. But again, instead of having just decay, we do have a bit of attack being set. So the pitch goes up and then it comes down and it creates this. No magic fingers on this one, but I think you get the idea of these atonal style of basses, and all you really have to do for it, again, is a bit of pitch modulation. But again, while these seem simple to program, it's always like, who thinks of doing stuff like this? So props to the original artist that inspired these sounds, but this is going to be number 5. Chorus feedback to the max. Now, chorus is an effect that most producers are going to use in order to achieve a sound of lush, more movement to it, and also more width. Okay, and what chorus does is it grabs the original sound, duplicates it, and modulates the timing and the pitch of the duplicated sound. And then from there, various choruses will do 5 voices, which means 5 duplications up to 8, etc., in order to achieve the effect. Back in the day of analog mono synths, this is what would be used in order to create the lush, I guess you could say 3-saw sound that the Juno is known for, etc. But in this scenario, what we're going to do is go to the max with it. So the cool thing about chorus is, again, it's sort of like a delay at the same time. But one of the things we can do is run this feedback to the max to turn this sound from. We can add this high feedback, and it creates these really effects that you've heard in a lot of DirtyBird tracks. But this is not even the end of it, because the other thing that you can do is that you can also increase the delay. And do really cool effects like this, which you can modulate. Lower the rate. Now you may be asking, okay, as you're doing that, Sen, how would I use that in a song? Well, one of the cool things in Ableton or any DAW is that you can resample or you can record what you're doing. So I'm gonna pretty much solo the sound that I'm doing this, and I'm gonna hit the record button. And then once I have that down here, I'm going to have the creation. And then I could use it in whatever way I please. I can pretty much get this and use it as a shot in the track. So for instance, if we have something like this happening, you can also reverse it to create a reverse instead. And you know, the possibilities are endless with this technique, but that is going to be feedback to the max. Just always remember to bounce it or have your modulation set, and if it's always predictable, then you're set to go. All right, guys, so these are some of the techniques that I use in order to create some of the more memorable sounds that you're going to find inside Dirty Chicken Volume 3. I hope that these techniques help in whatever kind of music you're making, maybe lo-fi, progressive house, where you want to achieve a similar effect. I mean, some of these are definitely out there, but of course, some of these can also be used to make beautiful music rather than like housey music to party to and stuff. But again, if you want to support the channel, make sure to head over to evilsounds.com. You can find all of my sound to sound work there. And if you want to support Dirty Chicken Volume 3 because you're making some nasty house, then that should be coming out Thursday night, Friday morning for some of you guys. And I hope that you guys enjoy it if you do support it. But other than that, you guys have a great rest of your day. Much love and peace out.
Back.